I don't know about all of you who are seated here today, but for me, this gospel presents to me a very, very big challenge in one way or the other. Because if we were paying attention to the proclamation of the gospel, Lazarus is well off. He's taking care of his own people. He's not convicted of anything immoral like usury or cheating people in business or doing any of that. He is celebrating the fact that he is blessed by God, because that's what they understood during that time in the history of Israel, that richness was a blessing from God, and the more riches you had, the more you were blessed by God, and all that. And that, for me, presents a problem when we read that when he died, he went to Gehenna. He didn't get to heaven. And we all know that in this time when Amos, if we know a little bit about the prophet Amos, Amos was always preaching that in the people of Israel, there was a sense of community, that everybody was responsible for one another, and they always were conscious of that. So when somebody broke the covenant, it broke it for all. So when they didn't take care of the poor, they also broke that covenant, and that's what Lazarus, or the rich man, was convicted for, to lack of a better term. He passed every day that man in front of his house that was poor and needy and in sores. He didn't do what the other gospel readings, the Good Samaritan, did and all that. He kind of had blinders on his eyes. It was his life, his way, or nothing going forward. And what the Lord today, at least when he was preaching this gospel, he was getting at the Pharisees and all this, what he was calling people to think about was probably something we don't always think about, but it's complacency. I am comfortable. I have maybe what I need, maybe not all what I need, but I am doing okay. And at times then we don't see a bigger picture. It's kind of like the Lord today wants us to take off, if we use glasses or contacts or whatever, take off our glasses and need to put on God's glasses to see a bigger picture, to see something greater than ourselves and in our families, and begin to reflect on that and try to think of how we are called sometimes to answer that or to be more aware of it. And I remember I was reading an article one time about people in race relations. And they had a particular article about two friends, and the one friend who was white said to her friend who was black, "You know, I don't see you as a black person. I see you as Mary," for lack of a better term. You know how Mary responded? "If you don't see me for who I am, then you don't see me. Because I am African American. That comes with a culture, that comes with the way I integrate myself into society and in my family. It is a whole different thing. Yes, we are friends, but I also bring my history with me and who I am." And I'm wondering at times if we're not, or at least I could say that I say I'm colorblind or I'm not a racist, but when I say that, do I really then appreciate the differences that there are in our world and in our society? I remember reading a book before the year 2000 called Megatrends 2000, and he mentioned a lot of stuff that may happen this century. One of the things that this author projected was, as we continue to advance in social media, as the world gets smaller because of mass communication, we're going to become more individualistic and nationalistic because we don't know how to live in a diverse world. There is an innate desire in us to be the same. And if I was thinking about that, I said, well, that's a really interesting point. How do we appreciate the differences? So one of the Lord's things today could be, as he challenges us to get out of complacency, do I accept diversity and all that means going forward? Or when I think about maybe when we say, oh, I know there's poverty in the world, do I break that down and not say there's just poverty in the world, but can I begin to see people who are poor and are struggling because they don't have the means to meet their daily needs. They don't have the benefits that some of us have or not. And can I just say, okay, there's poverty and I could give money to a charity, but how do I just say, no, there's not poverty, but how do I respect and pray for those people that are poor? And when I see people that don't act like I do, or that are different in their behavior, do I just say, oh, well, they just don't know how to act? Or can I get to know them and say, well, maybe they're depressed in this time with COVID and everything that's going on. Maybe they have a mental illness that we need to be more conscious of that. Or maybe they're depressed and need to have somebody to accompany them as they go forward. It's not just saying that they have bad behavior and we got to be careful of them, but it's breaking down that stereotype and beginning to see how the Lord maybe is present in their lives and calling us to be more responsive. Because the Lord also called his disciples to be that, to not just use general categories, but begin to see how he's present in our world. And so I know for myself for this week, I need to begin to reflect on, well, where are my complacencies? What do I not see as the Lord wants me to see in others, and probably even in myself, to do a good self-examination of how I'm responding to that presence in the Lord. Am I kind? What kind of behaviors do I have? All that goes on into a self-examination. So during this week, we are called with the Lord, to realize that we're not called to be just complacent and set in our faith, but rather to be people who evaluate and open our eyes to see how the Lord calls us to put to practice his kingdom, which is salvation for all.